These historic documentations are from a Jewish perspective. We black people, it seems to me, must be something special indeed. Now, I'm not trying to be facetious, but it seems inordinate, as I said last time, that practically everyone is against the Negro. Sinners and saints alike decry the inferior.
Wait a minute, I gotta stop. I gotta stop this and go back a little bit, because I want everybody to hear what Dr. Price has to say. I want everybody to hear what Dr. Price has to say. What year was this again? Let me see if I can. Let me stop this for a minute, because I want to go back some. I only got about an hour. I want to go back a little bit so they can hear this right here, what Dr. Price is saying. Let me close some of these windows up so it won't be any confusion as to what videos I'm letting play right now. No, matter of fact, before I do that, let me stop this for 1 second. Let me stop this for 1 second. Oh man, 8 minutes is so much. They'll go back and they'll see it. I can't play this other video. I have to go right in and let this thing play because I don't have a lot of time. Here it is. Here it is. Listen to what, he's not a black Hebrew Israelite. He's not preaching the awakening. Or is this a type of the awakening? Let me let it play. I'm here for the comments. Fair use.
Klaus is Klaus. Hansen, Hanes. Hansen, excuse me. Hansen. Copyright 1981, not ancient history. By the University of Chicago on page 184 and 185, Mr. Hansen states, and I quote, just exactly when, how, and why Mormon prejudice against Negroes developed into discriminatory policy is a matter of considerable controversy, though its existence is an incontrovertible fact. For more than a century and a quarter, the Mormon Church denied the priesthood to blacks, a policy publicized by Brigham Young in 1852 after the arrival of the pioneers in Utah. Because there is no evidence that Joseph Smith, the originator, made an unequivocal authoritative statement regarding black ineligibility for the priesthood.
So that's the Mormon Church. They've been racist from the very beginning. Blacks couldn't even join the priesthood. So a lot of people that remember that stuff growing up in the 80s and hearing that stuff and then later on seeing the white guys riding around with backpacks on in our neighborhood evangelizing us. Their religion is steeped in the supremacy, but they're not the only ones, but they were outwardly promoting and preaching this. A lot of people did it on the low, but they were outwardly doing that. Brigham Young University, that's top Mormon university, and Brigham Young, he came after Joseph Smith. He did a lot of the formulation of what we know today as the Church of the Latter-day Saints, LDS.
Some scholars believe the policy was in fact initiated by Brigham Young. Don't know for sure. While others insist that because Young based virtually all of his teachings on the authority of Joseph, this would be particularly true of a doctrine as controversial and far-reaching as priesthood denial to blacks. End of quote. On page 195 and 196, Mr. Hansen goes on to say, and I quote again, "It is perhaps not surprising then that when the saints, the Mormon saints, the saints like a modern Israel sojourned to their own promised land, they were mindful of the racial injunctions their God had issued to their predecessors. Though there were not Canaanites to rout, Brigham Young wanted to make sure that the time would not come when he might have to. In other words, get rid of the Canaanites. This may explain the hardening of racial attitudes after the saints had removed themselves from the world of the Gentiles, with only a handful of blacks, servants in brackets, in their midst. Certainly, Brigham Young's opinion regarding miscegenation appears extreme. It's hard for me to read this stuff. I mean, it really is. I mean, man, we really must be good gracious alive. I mean, it's unreasonable. It's hard. I mean, it's hard. You'll see what I mean when I read this. Now, all of a sudden, they're proselyting us. Had a couple of them come to my Tuesday night Bible class one time. Yeah. See, these were young ones. They may not know their past history. See, that's why history is so important. Because, see, you come and telling me about you love me, about you so interested in me. I want to know, are you interested in me or my money? You found out that black folk got a lot of money. They spend a lot of money. And so everybody wants to get a piece of the action. I'm sorry to say it, but you listen to this now. I ain't calling no names. I'm just, throwing stuff out there. Now, certainly Brigham Young's opinions regarding miscegenation appear extreme. Quote, this is Brigham Young now. Quote, shall I tell you the law of God in regard to the African race? This is Brigham Young. This be one of the original leaders of the Mormons.
So he started off giving y'all 3 or 4 Jewish sources talking about blackness and how because this other book I'm going to show you is going to explain it a little differently, but how deep this race thing is and how blackness and the curse or darkness seems to be connected with wickedness.
Shall I tell you the law of God? It's always God. Why don't they just take credit for their own racism instead of trying to blame God? And there's nothing in the Bible about it.
How many thousand people at Dome Hole held in the height of his ministry? How many people was how many people was in assembly? Give us some numbers. This was on television. This was on television in the 80s, 90s.
It's all in their own prejudiced minds. Shall I tell you the law of God in regard to the African race? If the white man who belongs to the chosen seed mixes his blood with the seed of Cain, the penalty under the law of God is death on the spot. This will always be so. End of quote. Now, have they changed that? Now, this is their leader, one of their founding fathers, Joseph Smith, his protege, Brigham Young. Brigham Young says, this will always be so. Well, if it will always be so, then how can you change it if it's God's law? I said, if it's God's law, how can you change it? Yeah, I want them to hear it all the way to Utah. I want to read it, quoting again. Shall I tell you the law of God in regard to the African race? If the white man who belongs to the chosen seed mixes his blood with the seed of Cain, the penalty under the law of God is death on the spot. This will always be so. End of quote. See, if it's God, Bible said God doesn't change. So if that was ever God's law, it's got to be God's law. Now somebody is lying. I didn't say who. I didn't say who. I just said somebody. There is no record that Young ever applied this law. In any case, it is doubtful that he had much reason to do so, since Mormon missionaries were instructed not to proselyte among blacks. Oh, you didn't hear that? I didn't hear that one, didn't you? Mm-hmm. In any case, it is doubtful that he had much reason to do so, since Mormon missionaries were instructed not to proselytize among blacks. But now God has changed his mind. Now, see, I don't ever know when to count on God now, because he changed. Flaky God. Mormon missionaries were instructed not to proselytize among black. Now they're running everywhere, Africa, all over the place. One of the most effective ways of discouraging blacks from becoming Mormons was to deny them the priesthood. This, of course, was a male prerogative whose blessings were extended to women through marriage. Only those who held the priesthood could enter into the, quote, new and everlasting covenant, end of quote, to be sealed in the temple for time and eternity, end of quote. Thus, when Brigham Young declared in 1852 that any man Thus, when Brigham Young declared in 1852 that, quote, any man having one drop of the seed of Cain in him cannot hold the priesthood, end of quote. Man, I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, they on our case. Now, my limited, ineffectual intelligence, my lack of smarts, the absence of gray matter in my cranial cavity, and my inferior black skin has one simple question to ask. I want to know, how in the world does somebody determine that somebody's got one drop of black blood in them? Will you tell me that? One. That's pitiful. Boy, you really against somebody. Just one drop of that blood of Cain. One drop. Anybody have a magnifying glass? Anybody have a magnifying glass here? You got a magnifying glass? You got to throw it back. Because we have a few members here of ours that are what are called white, and I just wanted to check them out and see if I can determine you got a drop of black blood in you, woman. Oh, there it is. Oh, look at that. It will drop. There's a drop right there. Oh, you're cursed with the curse of Cain, woman. Is that ridiculous? That's sick. Straight out of the pit of hell. Listen. That's when Brigham Young declared in 1852 that, quote, any man having one drop of the seed of Cain in him cannot hold the priesthood, end of quote. He brought into the open a doctrine that made it very unlikely that he would ever be called upon to administer death on the spot. Isn't it amazing that even one drop of black blood is so powerful that it would disqualify a man from entering the priesthood at that time? I'm telling you the truth. We black folks must be something. Let's go on. Mr. Hansen goes on to say, and I quote, the reference to the seed of Cain, while not inconsistent with the traditional justification for slavery, represents a shift in emphasis from the stock biblical genealogy through the curse of Ham as passed on to Canaan. When asked what chance of redemption there was for the Africans, Young answered that the curse remained upon them because Cain cut off the lives of Abel. The Lord had cursed Cain's seed with blackness and prohibited them the priesthood.
All right, in all fairness, now I'm going to stop this one. I'm going to go back to the other video. I'm going to see if these people saying the same thing, or it's some mess and it's some mess thrown up in the mix. And then I'm going to read. I can't even find where it's highlighted, maybe because I started reading the book and highlighting it from the phone, and then I don't know. I ain't got no help. All right, let me stop that for a second. Type of one. Hopefully y'all can hear me, and then I'm gonna just check on this. And then I'm gonna read.
To history, into the historical conversation in order to deceive people. So when you hear these apologists talking about a North Africa and a sub-Saharan Africa as if they're two different Africas where people didn't cross or mix, they are historically illiterate and ignorant, and they are deceiving people. I'm going to show you two videos now, and we're going to get back into this.
Currently, there's a huge debate going on about ancient Egypt, and we tried to cover a few of them here on this channel. And honestly, it's tiring because it's almost like talking about something that's nonsense, because there's archaeological findings that we have talked about. There are actual historical facts, but for some unknown reason, some people don't want to associate ancient Egypt with black. Let me show you this clip of an Egyptian brother I found on TikTok. He goes by the name of Sufi Alchemy. And let me tell you, he gathered the Egyptians that are pushing back. Watch this clip. We'll come back and discuss.
Dark-skinned people here in Egypt are of completely different features and culture than...
Assalamu alaikum. You mean the alkaline Hamitic features like myself? My skin color, my nose, my small lips, etc.? Sure, maybe the New Kingdom and the Ptolemaic period pharaohs would look like me, such as Ramses III. But I'm mixed. It doesn't say anything about my forefathers. My forefathers are dark-skinned Fulani. And so was the forefathers of Ramses III and these New Kingdom pharaohs, who were exposed to a lot of invasions and trades and immigrations from Europe and other parts of the world. So your argument is essentially like saying, I am brown, I have alkaline features, therefore my great-grandfather was also brown with alkaline Hamitic features. No, he wasn't. It's because my mother is white. So essentially, you deny the Old Kingdom and Middle Kingdom pharaohs, which had typical African features, and that is the part of what you say, which may be interpreted as a little bit racist. Then you go about comparing modern Egyptian identity and modern Nubian identity with ancient Kemet. That's completely invalid, because we don't care about modern Egypt in terms of identities. We care about the ancient Kemites 3,000 years ago. You know, it's 3,000 years. Things have happened that time, right? I mean, you wear a hijab, you're maybe a Muslim, huh? Where the ancient Kemites, Muslim and wearing a hijab, just trying to prove a point. That came with the Umayyad invasion when Sayyidina Usman got assassinated and the Umayyad cousins took power and invaded North Africa. People migrate tremendously, huh? Look at Dubai today. Most people in Dubai are immigrants. Look at New York, filled with immigrants. Amsterdam, filled with immigrants. The entire North Africa is filled with immigrants. I mean, the true people there are the natives. What do you think has happened to Egypt the last 3,000 years with invasions from Assyrians, Persians, Phoenicians, Romans, Greeks, you name it. So this argument that that land, a nation that you today call Egypt, has always been like that is completely false. Some people cite the 2017 DNA study, which actually doesn't say what people say it does, because I read the study in the Nature journal. Yeah, that's one study looking at 2 or 3 mummies. What about the 160 mummies that they didn't publish, right? What about the 1990 study that nobody talks about that showed sub-Saharan in the mummies? What about Sheikh Anta Diop's tests and so on? So you cannot just take one study and point to something. Yes, sure, there may be people in Egypt today and Nubia today who are direct distant descendants of some pharaoh. I mean, there would have been many people in ancient Egypt, but since people have migrated there for the last 3,000 years, you can have people in West Africa also are descendants of them. You can have people in Iran who may trace their lineage back to ancient Kemal. I mean, people move. So this kind of argument, let's assume that people don't migrate. People are static only in that geographic region. They don't move. There are no wars. There are no changing of people. Is completely historyless. It's a naive argument that can be disproven as simply as just looking at your random city in Europe today. And the idea that just because I have Alkaline Hamitic futures, my fathers also had Hamitic futures, that can change in 1 or 2 generations. Or the argument that the Egyptians today have some kind of proprietary right to history. I don't know what to say. It's ego, all I can say.
On that clip, he was responding to an Egyptian that is just angry that Black people believe that there are Black pharaohs and Black people that used to rule ancient Egypt. And she was claiming that, like, why are you doing this? Like, that's not your history. This is our history. And as you heard, he made good points. Like, just because right now, after all those invasions, after mixing, and after everything that happened in Egypt, you can't claim that you are the only descendant, and anybody else that doesn't look like you, they are lying. We need to sue them the same way the Egyptian lawyer is suing Netflix for creating Cleopatra. This is where we have come. Like, honestly, this is really tiring, but at least there's someone that is speaking facts and actually not.
What is this lady right here on the screen? What is she? What is this lady right here on the screen? A Hamite or a Shemite?
Shy about it. Anyways, fam, let us know down below what your thoughts are about this brother's explanation. I'm Ungil Zalala. See you on the next one. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the study of antiquity and the Middle Ages. As always, I am your host, Nick Barksdale, and today we are joined once again by Dr. Rebecca Futo-Kennedy, who's going to take us through a thought-provoking episode on the term sub-Saharan and the whitewashing of ancient North Africa.
Listen to this professor here.
Yeah, so I just think we should sort of like, because this idea, this like sort of continually trying to find this idea of, you know, separating out North Africa from sub-Saharan as if the Sahara was the impermeable boundary that nobody could get through is really a continually problematic type of argument. Particularly since we have early texts that tell us that, right, Herodotus tells us that, he says the Ethiopians and the Garamantes are indigenous to North Africa, and that, of course, the Phoenicians and the Greeks are not. But he makes it very clear that people he call Ethiopians are indigenous to North Africa and Northwest Africa in particular, right? But they are not sub-Saharan. So I just think, I constantly, what is the obsession that people have with this idea of sub-Saharan, that whenever they ask any question, what they're trying to do is prove that sub-Saharan Africans aren't part of the ancient Mediterranean world, which we know is false. Not only do we know, of course, that people that we would call quote unquote sub-Saharan Africans ruled Egypt before the Persians got there, among others, but that they have this continual culture that runs up and down the Nile. And we know from our ancient sources that they believed very firmly, and they interacted with what in the area that they called Libya, right? So ancient geography, Herodotus separates. There's a big geographic debate in the 5th century right? So on the one hand, we have Hecataeus, who has his map of the world, and Herodotus seems to be addressing him and trying to correct him at various points in his history. But there's debate of whether there's one continent or two continents, whether everything west of the Nile is its own continent called Libya, or whether it's not. One of our ancient sources actually has Europe and North Africa as one continent. Yeah, because Libya is the name that he uses for everything west of Africa, essentially, is what Herodotus uses. But it's also used at some points for the entire continent of what we call Africa. Because remember, Africa is a Roman word. It's not a Greek word. They didn't call it Africa. But yeah, this idea that there's a natural impermeable boundary that starts at the Sahara Desert, and that there's no penetration, and that everybody who has quote unquote black skin is below.
No, that's what they said. They want to call Herodotus the father of history, but it was plenty recorded history before he came on the scene. But he was one of the main ones that started recording history for them, and they looked to. So they just want to make him the father of everything. Like that other guy supposed to be the father of medicine and all this other nonsense. They come from another culture, come from another people. Fair use.
Below that line historically, and everyone above that is somehow magically white, shows one, a real lack of knowledge of how space works and how geography functions and how mobility and movement in the ancient world functioned. It shows a very limited view of our ancient sources. Like I said, I think I said this in another clip. If you're going to live by Herodotus, you got to die by Herodotus too. And if you're going to cite Herodotus for evidence of one thing, then you have to accept the fact that Herodotus says that Black people, Ethiopians in our ancient parlance, Ethiopians really in our ancient parlance, are indigenous to North Africa. They're indigenous to Libya, which is his word for basically everything north of the Sahara, because as far as he's concerned, south of the Sahara is uninhabitable, right? They believe that was an uninhabited region, uninhabited zone. Nobody lived there. It was too hot. So this is you have to understand that our ancient sources were very clear that in that northern part of Africa, that's where Ethiopians lived, were indigenous to. That means there were Black people there. But also the people that we refer to now as either Nubians or Cushites, those were also.
Excellent point. And I told y'all, Bishop McKinley and them, Bishop Roy Brown, the whole Pilgrim Assemblies, Elam International, tearing the city down with this. Tearing the city down with it. So how these folk run around like the church hiding something? Fred Price, mega church pastor back in the days talking this. This wasn't hidden in no corner. The camps think it was hidden in a corner. Some of these other funny dudes think it was hidden in the corner. This wasn't hidden in no corner. Everybody knew not to look at no white folk pictures in them Jehovah Witness book, in them Sunday school books. Everybody knew them pictures came about way after the printing press. Pictures from 1967 Sunday school book. And you Black folk, y'all hand me down Sunday school books. Some of y'all got from the denomination. They passed them down from the light-skinned folks. Some of y'all bought them. That was who was in the books. Till people want to be all exclusive, so you'll watch Fast and Furious. They'll have an Asian, Mexican, Latin person represented, Asian person represented, Black cool person represented, a white person represented. They'll have all of that now in all these super movies, Star Trek, all the big blockbuster movies. They gotta have all ethnic groups inside of the movie. But back in the days, you buy the books, this is what was in the books. Now, did the words change in the books? Matter of fact, let me stop right here with that. And try to pull this up, and we could go back to some of this. We're gonna go back to some of this. Let me see if I can. Where did that thing even at? Let me see if I can pull this up. Type of one of y'all. I got to look at my phone. And it's talking about the first chapter. It's talking about the story of Ham, and they just go ahead and reading it with Ham and them on the ark. Let me just make sure I can. Let me make sure. I just want to see one thing. All right, I'm gonna go. I think this is all right. Y'all can see this. Let me move most excellent thing, and I'm gonna just do a little bit of reading, and then I'm gonna try to play the rest of that and get out of here. The biblical story has been the single greatest justification for black slavery for more than 1,000 years. That's the story of Ham and the curse of Ham and the curse of, and all that blackness garbage that's not even in the Bible. They're superimposed and they're bringing something to the text that's not in the text. And that's what we've been asking other people. Are y'all bringing something to the text that's not in the text? For 1,000 years, it is the single justification indeed, for there is no reference in it to blacks at all. That Noah story, there ain't even no reference to black people in it at all. And yet just about everyone, especially in the antebellum American South, y'all know when you see anti, that's before bellum is war. Before the Civil War, antebellum, anti-Nicene church fathers. Who are the church fathers before Nicaea? When you see that word. And the antebellum American South understood that in this story, God meant to curse black Africans with eternal slavery, the so-called curse of Ham. Not even in the Bible, but it's something that passed down for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years among millions and millions of people. As one pro-slavery author wrote in 1835, the blacks were originally, look at that, the blacks were originally designed to vassalage by the patriarch Noah. Well, well, well. This book attempts to explain how and why this book is called The Curse of Ham. This book attempts to explain how and why this strange interpretation of the biblical text took hold. It does so by looking at the larger picture. That's the background, what's been going around in the biblical lands and in the time this interpretation was introduced. That is by uncovering how blacks were perceived by those people for whom the Bible was a central text. What did the early Jews, Christians, and Muslims see when they looked at black Africans? Clearly, let me go back, sorry. Clearly, the biblical interpretation is forced. That means it's not in the book. They making the book say something it ain't saying. How then did the biblical authors view black, the people that wrote the Bible, the people that wrote, who are the people that wrote the Bible? Israelites. How did the biblical authors view blacks, and were they post-biblical, post means after, post-biblical forces that wrung such a view to the Bible? This is a book about the ancient link between black skin color and slavery. It is thus a study of perception, symbolic association with historical ramifications. It explores how dark-skinned people were perceived in antiquity, that's just back in the days, how negative associations attached to the color of black were played out on the stage of history, and how the connection between blackness and slavery became enshrined in the Curse of Ham. In 1837, the painter and theorist Jacques Nicolas Palliot, however you pronounce his last name, wrote this. Look at this symbol. I mean, look at this poem. White is the symbol of divinity and God, 1837. Blacks was a symbol of evil and pure or the demon. White is the symbol of light. Black is the symbol of darkness. Darkness expressed all evils. White is the emblem of harmony. Black is the emblem of chaos. White signifies supreme beauty. Black, ugliness. White signifies perfection. Black signifies vice. White is the symbol of innocence. Black, that of guilt, sin, moral degradation. White, a positive color, indicates happiness. Black, a negative color, indicates misfortune. The battle between good and evil is symbolically expressed by the oppositions of white and black. This author wrote these words in a manual for artists. For us, they starkly demonstrate how deeply and how many varied ways black-white symbolism is part of the entire Western culture. Let me go back a little bit now. Let me go back. I'm going to stop this for a second. Let me pull this bag up right here. Fair use.
End of quote. Noah's curse on Ham's posterity, in fact, may have been a kind of added insult to an injury incurred because of Ham's marriage to a Canaanite, through whom his descendants would have inherited Cain's curse in any case. Now, let's go back and read this for a moment. Go to Genesis chapter 4, and let's look at this curse of Ham, of Cain rather. In other words, God cursed Cain, and his curse was blackness. That's what they're saying. One drop. That's awesome. Boy, we are powerful. Just one drop of our blood can disqualify you. Whew. Man, what could you do with 1,000 drops? Might even be able to fly like a bird. All right, now Genesis chapter 4, beginning with verse 9. Then the Lord said to Cain, now this was after Cain killed his brother, murdered his brother Abel, okay? Then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel, your brother? He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. A fugitive and a vagabond you shall be on the earth. And Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Surely you have driven me out this day from the face of the ground. I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth. And it will happen that anyone who finds me will kill me. And the Lord said to him, therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord.
Now remember, we're not seeing no blackness. This is imposed upon the text. This how come we got to be careful with commentary and who's giving us quote unquote religious instructions. How can a lie spread so far and vast? Remember the poem now, because when we go back to the slides of Malcolm X and angel food cake and devil food cake, and artists started that, but it was connected, and we'll go back even further. Why did Jewish people feel the way they felt and had certain things in their writings?
Set a mark on Cain and turned him black, lest anyone finding him should kill him.
Now, we've had pastors say that anytime somebody had some type of curse on them, like what's his name start with a G, Elijah's servant that went back and took that money and took that jury he wasn't supposed to take, and then went back and he said, my spirit went with you. The curse of leprosy that was on him, let it be on you and your seed. And they love giving you the story of Moses sticking his hand in his bosom and pulling it back out. Is there any color cursings in the Bible anywhere, based on color, anywhere in the Bible? Not that you're imposing on the text, is it there?
Now, so that's where they got this when God set a mark upon Cain. The mark obviously was black skin. I mean, it couldn't be anything else but black skin. I mean, it's got to be black skin. That was the curse. Now watch this though, to show you how these rats are so tricky, so slick and slimy. They talk out of one side of their mouth. That's why the Native Americans used to say about the whites whenever they came into some situation. Did I say it right? Native Americans used to say about the white man, you speak with forked tongue.
Who else used that but just called them devils? Who else talking that fork tongue stuff? Because y'all think it came from Elijah Muhammad. Y'all think it come from the 5%. Y'all think it came from Clarence 13X. Fair use.
They say one thing out of one side of their mouth and then say something else or do something else. And watch this. See, the rats don't.
Do me a favor. Type 1 if this is ungodly to be teaching this in the house of the Lord. Type 1 if you born. I don't want to hear from near Israelite. My block finger heavy right now. Type 1 if you think this shouldn't be taught in the house of the Lord. This is ungodly. This is causing division. Why can't we all just get along doctrine? Fair use.
Don't even believe their own garbage, their own press. They don't even believe. Watch this now. Watch this now. Verse 15. And the Lord said to him, therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark on Cain, lest anyone finding him should kill him. So now, if Cain and all of his posterity were cursed with black, and the purpose of the curse was so that nobody would kill him, then what have these white folks been doing, lynching and killing black folk all these years? See what kind of junk is just so much junk. And the church fosters and perpetuates this garbage.
Not the Catholics. Don't get involved in apologetics and run around talking about that's the Catholics, because you expose yourself as not knowing no history. Plenty of Protestants had slaves. Fair use.
No, they don't even believe that. Talk with forked tongue. Because God, see, hey, God, the reason God put the curse on him is so nobody would kill him.
When did talking the truth become hate speech? Fair use.
So these white folks have been lynching black folk. Thousands of them over the years have been lynched and killed and murdered. But you ain't supposed to kill me because I'm black. God put this on me so you wouldn't kill me.
That's valid.
Are you still here? All right, listen to this. Practically all of these documentations we are constantly told, all these documentation, we are constantly told that the results of the curse was the will of God. Therefore, making God the one actually responsible for initiating the curse. But then, of all things, God changed his mind, according to the Mormons, which in reality goes contrary to the Bible, which says in Malachi 3:6, for I am the Lord and I do not change. Because Mr. Hansen tells us on page 198, and I quote, on June 8, 1978, the first presidency of the Mormon Church in a historic letter made the unexpected and dramatic announcement that all worthy male members of the church may be ordained to the priesthood without regard for race or color, end of quote. God changed.
All right. Let me stop that right there and try to get another page or two in here. I'm just going to hit what I got highlighted. And we'll pick up the rest later. Some scholars argue the historian Winthrop, all right, African Baskin, I think I got that part right there. Probably symbolic. Toni Morrison, let me go right here. Color meant something. Color meant something indeed. It meant a great deal, and it conveyed the same negative association in many different cultures. Wait a minute now, in many different cultures, the same negative association in many different cultures, the same, I'm reading the same thing, Lord, give me some glasses. The same black-white color symbolism is seen in Western tradition is found in China and Southern Asia. It has been found among the Chang, the same Tibetan people, the Mongol, I'm gonna chop these words up, a Mongolian people, the Chucky, y'all know, of Siberia, and the Crete Indians of North America, and the Sanskrit Candonians and Japanese, as well as Western literature. Indeed, according to many anthropologist reports, the phenomenon is common even in Black Africa. We judging people. Oh, well, I forgot y'all had the paper bag test, so let me just keep reading. It appears that the symbol of Black negativity and white positive is widespread among people of all colors. Oh man, I don't know if that's good. I don't know if that's a good look right there. I don't know if that's a good look right there. I'm coming back to read some of these comments. Fair use.
So-called Ethiopians by our Greek sources, and they were in Egypt and they controlled Egypt for various times. And we actually have a lot of evidence. If you put Egypt into its African context in antiquity, its vision is not.
Reason I played those videos is so that you could see a different group of people saying the same thing that we're saying. Because see, Dr. Brown in one of his latest shows tried to push the narrative that we're manipulating the Bible, even though there are other people saying that no, this is historically accurate and these are the original people. They didn't look like the people who are there now. And yet you have these deceivers like Dr. Brown and some of the other apologists. They want you to believe that the Black Hebrew Israelites, or as he called them, the radical Black Hebrew Israelites, are using the Bible out of context and misusing it to prove race. Well, what about the history? This is why they don't want to address the history, because it makes it easier to deceive people when they don't get into the history. It makes it easier to deceive people when they teach nonsense doctrine and say, well, this is what the Bible teaches. Well,
do me a favor. When my people, when the church folk pull up, I got to cut this thing short, but do me a favor. Nobody getting blocked right now. Who's been trying to deceive? Say the names. Who's been trying to deceive? I don't know if these folk deep enough in the history. Dr. Bantu made some statements, and you know, I'm riding. I agree with a whole bunch of what he said. He is a scholar for real in this thing. Who been trying to deceive people? Say some names. Let me put this link out there real quick. Don't say I got on there and I was talking the truth. And I listen, when my people pull up, I'm shutting this down. I'm shutting this down when my people pull up. But who's trying to deceive? I think some people don't know. I think some people ain't laid enough into the history. Now I gotta jump on this because we was doing this though 28 years ago with Ben and them. We was all of that stuff. We had all that on VHS. We was all on DVD. We was already getting it in with them folk. Anacalyptics and all of that stuff. We was dealing with all that. Mary Lefkowitz and Dr. Brown and all of them, and Diop and all of them. We've been doing all of this. So who been trying to deceive? Who been trying to deceive? Let me see some names. Richardson came on here and said some stuff. I thought he was gonna come back with that work, but he didn't. It's okay. I know. I ain't gonna even say it's okay. Let me I gotta look out this window because they'll park out and just be out there. They don't know they got to blow for me. Let me let it play. He said, somebody said Garfield. Let me call. Dang, I call Garfield right now. I had to, where Muck runner? I might have to lead him. I might have to lead him with the computer on. See that now? If y'all would have told me, yo, this is how you shut it down from the phone when you get out of here. Y'all don't want to help old people. I know y'all don't want the truth. Y'all trying to stop my progress.
The Bible seems to say something different when we go and look at it. When we start asking common sense questions, none of it makes sense. So now I'm going to read you. We're going to look at a source. And this source is Anacalypsis. Shout out to Tazara, who went over a few pages in this source in the last video I showed.
Anacalypsis, who was Godfrey Higgins and them? I got to show y'all, boy. Y'all say y'all keep playing with me. I'm gonna show y'all. Them folk, them squares been helping y'all a long time. But y'all dumb, deaf, and blind to it. Most of the light y'all talking about, y'all walking in, I can show and prove that come from squares. What we gonna do with that now? Is it demons? Because y'all say they demons, right? They worship Lucifer, right?
Of his, and I'm going to go over a few different pages. We were actually working on something at the same time out of the same book, and we didn't know it. I didn't know because he sent me the video. I didn't know he was going to send me a video. He sent me the video, and then when I saw what he was working on, I was like, wow, I'm actually working on that same book in a different area. So yeah, this is Anacalypsis, an attempt to draw aside veil of the Saitic Isis, or an inquiry into the origin of languages, nations, and religions, Volume 1, published in 1836. Now, remember, they want you to believe, and by they, I mean the apologists, specifically the Christian apologists that are against anything Black having to do with Israel in the Bible, the racist apologists.
He calls them the racist apologists. Do me a favor. Somebody name some of the racist apologists. What apologists don't know that there's Ethiopian Jews that have been airlifted back to Ethiopia? Name the apologists. Oh, we say their names on here. I don't care about them folks. Y'all got me confused. Say their names. Who? Who got a video showing you that? Or is it that they don't agree with the agenda with the 400 years and the doctrine that's being taught that everybody over here is Israel? You forcing Cushites to be Israelites. Well, y'all know who's a baby crying like a Hamite. Could that be the problem? But if they're deceptive, let's call it for what it is. Who are they? Who are they? Let's pull up their videos right now. Let me see. I think I can see that call spin the corner. He said Vocab Malone don't speak about the Ethiopian Jew. Vocab Malone, Dr. Brown, Henry Abramson, who don't believe it's Black Ethiopian Jews that white Israel airlifted back to the land. White Israel concerned with the DNA of them limbo. I didn't want to pull up that Ebu thing from the back chat and read that right now. I wish I had a reader. Right now. Man, says this stuff like here. I gotta go out here and take care of that. So boy, I feel like canceling. I feel like canceling and getting it in right now because I'm learning a little something. At least I got 2 books poked up. Who are they? Vocab Malone is trying to hide the fact that there's Black Israelites. Pull up the video. We'll call him out right now because a devil got to get called out. But if he not doing it and y'all twisting up some stuff, don't call y'all out. Leave us alone, doctrine. Don't preach that now. Y'all been singing for a long time. Y'all been hollering for a long time. Y'all been wanting attention for a long time. Now y'all on the front, default churches. That's my people. You in front of the churches. Cousins, baby mamas, wives, grandmama and them, uncle and them, all in the church. Y'all coming up in front of the church like y'all got something to teach. Come and teach it. Come and build on it. Don't broad brush funny dudes. Y'all whole time funny because we got a history. We got a track record. The Black church got a track record. Oh, they don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that. They just want to talk about white supremacy. We talk about white supremacy and Christianity. See, we talk about that. There he is right there. There he is right there. All right, he pulling all up in the driveway. Oh, man. Boy, I feel like, let me say, this is where I'm finna get ignorant. Let me call and see if they really need me. I told them to come pick me up. I'm talking about, let me call and see if they really need me. Oh, man. All right, I'm coming down right now. I see what time. Oh, it's 2:07. All right. Oh, man. All right, we shutting it down. I'm going to leave everything right here. I got a good mind to take this laptop with me. I got a good mind. In fact, let me plug this thing. I'm shutting it down right here. I might take this laptop with me. I'm going to take our Wi-Fi over there.